talk about something that's really close to my heart, um, which is emotional intelligence. So first, I'm going to share a little bit more about my personal journey with emotional intelligence, because I think, at least for me, it's a fairly recent thing that I realized just how important it is to me. Um, then I'm going to cover a few things that you can do to really help you grow your own emotional intelligence capabilities. Um, and in the end, I'm going to quickly cover how that can have an impact on not just yourself, but your entire company and the team around you. Because the powerful thing about really being strong on emotional intelligence is that it's not just you it can affect, it's everyone else. So yeah, my stories, this is really my passion. I found out really fast that once I had turned this on, I couldn't stop just with myself. I really felt like I needed to also share it with others, because I think I started the way a lot of people did, at least a lot of people I know in tech, being, you know, everything needs to be very technical. I need to bring out all the facts, and the facts are more important than emotions and soft skills. Um, every time, all the development jobs I had, it was very much I tried to push those things away so I could focus on the technical. And that never really worked out well for me. Um, I I never really got to use my strengths. So I was continuously struggling. Um, but that all changed when I sort of took my first management job, and started realizing, well, every time I talk to other engineers, they also have some of these same challenges I have, where they they feel like they aren't necessarily able to fully utilize their skills in a team setting, because they don't practice those soft skills, and they don't grow their emotional intelligence to a higher level. At some point, while they can have their technical skills, um, their development simply can't go far enough if they don't also go on some sort of emotional intelligent journey. So yeah, after I figured that out, I sort of went on a full on, now I need to know everything about this, and figure out how to use it in my daily work as a manager. And I really wanted to not just bring that to my team, but also to bring that out to everyone else, which is why I'm here. And yeah, um, it's been a really great journey for me. It's not been necessarily been easy, because I had to unlearn a lot of things and learn a lot of new things. But that's also why I want to help others on the same sort of journey. I'm sure a lot of you already are really strong in emotional intelligence. That is very typical, that women tend to be a little bit stronger on that side. But I still really want to share how you can really use that. So I generally see 4 different layers of emotional intelligence. Um, and the first one is, and the core really of it, is self-awareness. That is understanding yourself, understanding how you react to situations, and all the things that influence that. Um, because that is really what gives you the ability to make the right changes, which comes with the self-realization part. You need to also understand how you can use your strengths to really make a change in your life. So those are the 2 layers that you can sort of work on just for yourself. And it's really important not to skip over this step of self-awareness and self-realization, because if you jump straight into wanting to change others and wanting to have that impact on others, you will end up making a lot of mistakes, because you will not, in many times, you will not have a deep understanding of what drives people and what causes people to have negative patterns. But that leads us to the sort of lower layer of this, which is connecting with others. This is about really making an effort to connect with others, to understand their reasonings using all of your learnings from before, which means you can then, in the end, create an impact and help them make a positive change in their life, especially when it comes to work. So these are all really sort of standard emotional intelligence layers, but it's never as easy as that. It's never as easy as just being like, oh, now I'm self-aware, and now I can change others. So one of the really core foundational skills for all of this is empathy. And empathy is something that many people think you're born with. You are either empathetic or you're not, and it couldn't be further from the truth. Empathy is a skill we all can learn, and it's something we can all practice, and something we all should practice to really create a positive impact on our work. So how do you do that? How do you actually practice emotional intelligence and learn the skills you need, not just to really move yourself further, but also move others further, and learning how to use some of these techniques to push others forward? I prefer really 3 really practical, very simple exercises that can help you really uncover some of your biases and figure out how to move to the next step. The first one is introspection. That is the key. As I said, that is the first layer where you get to learn who you are and why you do things. So just so you know, I will be sharing some templates for you that I made specifically for this presentation that you can use to sort of practice some of these things yourself. But introspection for me is going through specific examples in your life. And the closer you are to the thing that's happened, the better you can actually judge what happened and why you reacted the way you did, and if it ended up actually producing the outcome you wanted, and in that case, what you should do different. That is something I practice often with my engineers, the engineers in my team. So basically, I give them feedback, saying what they did, trying to get them to understand what they wanted to accomplish, and then reflecting on what actually happened. Why didn't it succeed? Going through the 5 whys technique as well to really uncover and go deep into their reasonings and their expectations, so that we can work on changing those. It is the basis for most of my management work, so that is why I really want to highlight how important this is. And the second part here, which sort of covers some of the same ground, is once you have those situations and you figure out that you actually want to make change something, you want to figure out why you do what you do and why you want to change. So a lot of the time when we want to change something, it's sort of a very shallow expectation. We go, oh, this would be nice to change. But that is generally not a very successful way of changing our patterns, especially when it comes to our personality. And it is, it's really important to get your whys down here. It's always important to get your whys down, but especially when it comes to changing something that's really part of who you are. Because as you notice, one of the last questions I asked here is, do you consider this part of who you are? Sometimes we don't consider it part of who we are. It's just an unfortunate habit, and that's usually fairly easy to change. But the moment you consider something as part of who you are, it gets harder to change, and you want to really figure out why you do things, so you can put in techniques so when it gets rough, you know how to actually move forward from it. You know how to say if you have a problem with anger, you will be able to say, when I feel angry, I will do this. I will take a step back and ask for a quick break, so that it doesn't affect my work life. And that's some of the same things you can do to others to really help them learn. This is, by the way, in general, a really good way of learning new skills, not just soft skills, because it can be hard, fairly hard. It's also really important to dismantle your current beliefs, because, you know, that is key to why we do things that might be unfortunate. Once you've then figured out, why do you do, like, this is what I do, this is the impact it has, and why do I do this? I always enjoy doing a quick gap analysis. And again, this will be covered in an exercise if you want that. But going through what is actually your ideal, what is it you want to accomplish, and how far you are from it, and figuring out how you will get that, and making very specific action points from that, and goals, is important. And one thing I want to really emphasize here, which is also really a core of emotional intelligence, is focus on the things you can control instead of the things you cannot. Things you can control is your own actions and how you try to react to the things that happen to you. You cannot control all the things that happen to you, and you cannot control how other people react to you. That is not at all possible. You might be able to influence it, but you cannot control it. And letting go of that expectation of, if I do this, this will happen, will help you focus on actually building these skills, also when they're not quite there yet. Of course, all of this is not a linear process. You don't just go from A to B. Always continue to go back and like reflect on your actions and reflect on other people's action to see if there's places you can improve. So this is 3 really good techniques that you can use in combined. And if you're a manager, you can also use it to influence your team. But in the end, I also want to say, even if you're not a manager, this is also something you can use to really help others. In the end, when you do leadership, it has less to do with how intelligent you are and much more to do with how you do things, the way you inspire others. And that is why I find personally that leadership and emotional intelligence go hand in hand. I'm fairly certain most of us have had bosses that for some reason rubbed us the wrong way. And for that, I really want to emphasize we are able to influence the work life we have around us, and even more so when we are leaders. When we take that step up in leadership, our impact becomes more formal. However, you can still be a leader even if it's not your title. I think we all have not only the ability, but also the reasons behind making a positive change in our work environment, not just for our own sakes, but for everyone's sake. And of course, emotional intelligence is not just a work thing. It can also have a huge impact on your personal life. But yeah. So speaking of leadership styles, I just really wanted to bring out the Daniel Goleman's leadership styles here, which is visionary, coaching, affiliative, democratic, pace-setting, and commanding. So I'm just gonna throw out a really open question here. Who has, like, if you think back on the most influential, like negative or positive boss you've ever had, and try to look at each of these and explain why. Can anyone bring a story? Otherwise, I will bring my amazing story of this. So has anyone ever had any of the sort of green visionary coaching, affiliative, or democratic leaders? So, and if you're not sure, let me know. I will explain them more in detail. Anyone?
I don't mind sharing.
Yeah.
I don't know if where I would put this boss exactly. Maybe in between, probably affiliative or democratic. I had a boss. I'm a software engineer now, but I used to work with buying. So I used to work in a head office, and when I decided, I really, really didn't enjoy it. And when I decided to become an engineer, I was a bit torn between telling my boss or not, but I told her, and she was just really, really lovely. She said I could always tell that this wasn't for you. Like, this kind of job doesn't challenge you, you know. And I was always doing like Excel stuff, and I was really excited about doing the spreadsheets and the kind of stuff. And she said, yeah, that's not for you. So I fully support you. And I told her, like, in my free time, I'll be studying, you know, I'll be taking my lunch time to study and stuff like that. And she was really, really supportive. And when I finally got my job, she was so happy for me. She was crying because it was such a hard time for like the team, like really busy, but she was so happy for me. And we kept it. It's been almost 4 years now, and we've kept in touch. So it's been a really, really impactful boss for me. And she was always really empathic in terms of like personal life, and always really, you know, caring. And it's really good to have someone like that.
Yeah, so that sounds like a highly affiliative boss, if you ask me. And that is really someone who's able to create harmony, not just with one person, but in the entire team, by listening, by caring, as you say. And it can have an immense positive impact because you will always feel heard, or it sounds like it at least.
Yeah.
And it's not that, so you are absolutely right when you sort of said you didn't know where in which line it sort of was, whether it was affiliative or democratic, because it's not like you just have one of these styles. You can have a dominant style, and then you can sort of have others you use to in different situations to really bring different people out. Me, I am personally really high in the coaching. I love seeing people grow. I love giving them challenges that I feel like they can handle. And I always try to give people a go. But that doesn't, at the same time, I also really do care about people. So I do have some of the other styles, but I definitely would say I'm high in coaching. And it's all about finding your strengths. That said, does anyone want to share a story about one of the more negative or leadership styles? So that would be pace setting, someone who really sets sets the pace high and expects high results, and sometimes might go in and jump in and take over things if they don't feel like things are going too well enough, or the commanding, the people who really sort of say, you need to do this, why don't you do this, or be like, you need to do it exactly like this. Anyone want to share a story there? Or has everyone had amazing bosses? Don't be shy. All right, then I will share my story, because I have been very affected by, I am a bit, my leadership style and the way my personality does not go well with pace setting, um, leadership styles. So I'm very much a self-motivator, so that part, and I really like getting results, but I do not appreciate the very high pace when I can see it impacts other people. And I don't appreciate the focus on speed over growth of people. So whenever people start, the thing I don't like about that style for me, and why I don't find it, is because you don't get the support you need. So as you can see, coaching is very much about giving support and really focusing on, growing people. Pace setting is about people already being at a very high level, and really just pushing forward without really stopping. And I had a boss recently who in many ways exemplified pacing. He was very, very talented, and he expected very high, like a lot from the people around him. And he rewarded only the people who really moved fast with him as well. Sort of leaving the people who weren't as fast behind. And he couldn't understand why people didn't trust him, why there was a lack of trust. And we had a lot of conversations around that. And he was very much a person who thought, well, people just need to grow up and move on and really just deal with these things himself. And I could see the pain it caused for some of the people in the around me. And for me, that showed like he at least there's nothing wrong with having a pace setting leadership style, as long as you mix it with some of the more supportive styles, because you can use a pace setting style to really amplify things for the right people. But you really have to be careful about not forgetting the people who aren't at as high a pace. So there's also a situation where both a pace setting and a commanding leadership style is really effective. Such as if there's a fire, you don't want someone to do a democratic survey and be like, oh, what should we do now? You want someone who goes in and say, we need to do this. And of course, FI is a bit of an extreme, but there are cases where having a commanding style can be really, really efficient, as long as it's not constantly. So this is all about finding a balance, and leaning more heavily on the visionary, the coaching, the affiliative, or the democratic style in your work. And I want you, if you notice some of the keywords I've written down here, all of the sort of positive, purely positive leadership style has empathy, because empathy is the key to leadership, as I've sort of tried to bring forward here. And I think that is really the key here. Now, I always suggest people really try to figure out what kind of leader they are. What is it you lean on? So when you do these exercises, what is it you lean on? Do you really appreciate other people's input? And finding a balance, because then you might lean heavily into democratic, which can be really useful to figuring out your strengths, but also to figure out, should you try to grow some of the other areas here? So maybe it's really so important to also have some of the visionary style in you, to really put forward something that inspires people, feeling confident in your own opinion as well, so that you hit different kinds of people with your leadership style, and not just the people who are really comfortable in a democratic setting. So that's also a way you can really use these different styles to figure out, where I actually need to upskill myself to become an even better leader and to have an even bigger impact. And I'm inching towards the end. I know I had around a half an hour, so thank you. But yeah, so obviously this is all great because it has an impact on you and the team around you, but it also has an impact on the business. So really using emotional intelligence to really grow your leadership impact leads to more autonomous teams and individuals, because you really build up trust when you try to be empathetic, when you use when you give people responsibility and you don't try to control what they do. And that can also lead to a lot more innovation, because you enable people to feel comfortable enough to bring things up, instead of feeling like they will be judged. So it leads to inclusivity, which I think is really important for tech, considering women are so often feel a bit alone. I was, in my experience, I'm of course not talking about all of you. You guys are here. You have a group, but a lot of the women I speak to tend to feel a bit alone and feel like a little bit like they don't belong. And creating that understanding for people's situations can really help with that, and really help bring people forward. Of course, there's also growth, especially if you lean into the coaching leadership style. And that generally leads to higher quality code, higher engagement. People want to create more when they feel happy, when they feel heard. And finally, again, people leave. People join great companies but leave bad managers. So having that empathy, having that emotional intelligence can really help people work through their negative experiences, because we will all be stressed sometimes, but creating that environment for people to be open about it and to tackle it and to understand how you can help them overcome these things based on their personalities can really help raise morale and lower stress as well. So I just want to finish this off with a really, really amazing quote, which is, when we focus on others, our world expands, because I think in many ways that is also important in all this. If you choose to really go into this whole emotional intelligence journey, taking the time to not just focus on yourself, but also focus on others and how to create a difference for them, is so rewarding. That's why I'm doing it. It's why it's my passion right now. And yeah, it's been an amazing for me. I've been able to come here and talk to you today, which I never thought I would. I never really thought this would be part of my day. And I'm really thankful for that. And yeah, I hope you have been able to get something out of this really rough introduction to emotional intelligence. And I definitely recommend reading more. This not half an hour is not enough to really go deep, I know, but I hope you might have a good idea about why it makes a difference now, what you can do to really improve not just your emotional intelligence, but your workplace. And yeah, if you have any questions now, or if you just want to talk, I'm also available later. But yeah, questions.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. That was really interesting. Also, it's such an important topic that I'm sure all of us can relate to when we're listening and thinking, oh yeah, like comparing different situations and different leaders that we've had. So thank you very much for your talk. If anyone has any questions, feel free to either drop them in the chat or just unmute yourself and fire away.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
I was just wondering, Sarah, if you've read the, I had the name in my mind and it just slipped, the Radical Candor book.
I have not read the book, but I have seen the presentation,
thing.
the tech talk she made. So yeah,
What
I
do you
know
think
of it.
about it?
It's something that I personally use basically every day when I give feedback. I think one of the things that where it really helps is to, so obviously you need to make sure you have the trust with people, but bringing that honesty and caring is really powerful. It means that people can trust you to speak up for them and to them. It means that people will actually be able to change. As I said, it's a key to a lot of this. So, were you wondering something specific, like how to use it, or was it just how I thought about it? Because I think it's extremely important.
No, it was just, I think it's a tricky one because from my experience and mostly from hearing people talk about it, because I haven't really, we haven't really followed it strictly at work, say, but we do talk about it sometimes, and I feel like it might be something that people use wrong, and it could lead to miscommunication, people getting a bit annoyed at each other. Like I had one boss before, he was actually like the head of the DevOps team, and he kind of ventured into being like engineering manager, and it was difficult because he didn't have any of the soft skills. So he was a bit too honest. He was like incredible developer. He always like gave praise when it was due and all like that, but he didn't have the soft skills. So we knew he was being honest, but first of all, he micromanaged, but that's another story. But I think just, I think it's really tricky, and sometimes it can come across a bit maybe rude or a bit maybe like you're a bit too critical. So I was just wondering if you agreed or if you thought maybe that was a bit harsh. Or
So I think radical candor is hard. I think when it's done right, it's amazing. But you're right, there are a lot of pitfalls. Some of the things I do every time I never start out with that like with radical candor until I know, like I've built some trust there. I always start out with a lot of care, so people understand that I actually do care about them before I give that. I turn it on to the radical part. And for me, some of the things I really make sure to before I do that is to say, ask them, how do they how would they actually like feedback? Are they okay with things like with me being very honest and upfront when I see something really fast, but knowing that I'm being like, I want you to know that it's because I care. And if it ever gets to be too much, you need to feel comfortable enough to tell me, so that it's not just me piling it on, and I will try to learn, because I'm not perfect either. And if you don't have that conversation first with people or have built up that trust, then radical candor does not work. You cannot just go out to a random person or it's even someone you know from work and just do it. You need to have that built, like that trust built up before you can use it effectively, in my experience.
Mm-hmm.
So that's probably what's missing.
Sorry, go on. Yeah. I was just wondering, how would you suggest, I'm asking now more, I don't think I have any particular issues, but I was just wondering, because I'm starting to mentor someone at work, and it's, well, I've kind of helped juniors before a little bit more in a technical way, but now I'm starting to mentor this junior developer, and I was just wondering if you have any like top tips of how to really get him to engage. We've been like today we did some pairing and all, and it goes quite well, but I want him to be a bit more comfortable with me, and because sometimes I feel he has a bit like, if I ask him, oh, have you heard about this, and I don't mean like oh, if you haven't, you're not a good developer. I mean more in the sense like, if you have, I won't bother you with a very long explanation, but sometimes I feel like it's a bit like, no, actually I haven't, like almost saying sorry. So I wanted to develop this trust, and that he feels really comfortable and excited to work together.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I think the best thing you can actually do in this situation is ask him or her. I wasn't sure if it was a him or her,
That
but
guy.
yeah. So I would ask these clarifying questions. How do really explore what is it he actually wants from this mentorship? How can you best support him in that? Really asking those clarifying questions and getting to the point, and then explaining, really like making that agreement with him that you will come with this and this is why you will do it. So he doesn't feel like he has to apologize or have to be like, oh no, I don't. Being like, telling him that, really having that conversation, using your soft skills to explain these things to him. So a lot of the time you might be coming to him with these things, being expecting him to expecting it to be taken as, you're just sharing knowledge. But in order for that to really work, you need to have those expectations clarified and agreed upon, because it might not work for him the way you intend. So you need to actually have that conversation with him.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
Thanks.
It's never easy, by the way.
Yeah.
Thank you, by the way, Livia.
No worries, thank you.
Any further questions from anyone? Might have covered everything now. No? Okay, that's everything. Well, thanks everyone for joining us, and obviously thanks to Sarah for a very engaging talk and a good question and answer at the end. The recording will be available, so we'll share it on the pages afterwards, and if anyone's interested in and talking themselves, then let us know. Have a good evening, everyone. Thanks all. Bye.